Hi everybody, it is John from Jilk here. We're going to do another track walkthrough. We're going to do two tracks today. We're going to do Comeback Complete and Shapes You Can't Give Meaning. They appear together. They're the last two tracks on part one of the album. There's a conceit that runs through the album where each track, the tracks appear chronologically in terms of the writing of them, and each track is kind of a reaction to the one that came before it, and that can be quite subtle in that, it just uses a sample or there's a kind of motif that repeats, or we work in opposition to any of those ideas. But with these two tracks, it's very much a kind of part one, part two kind of deal, to the point where Shapes You Can't Give Meaning is essentially a remix of Comeback Complete. You can see here in the Pro Tools session there's a part two marker. So both songs were written within the same session, within the same sort of DAW page, so to speak. This live end marker, that's to do with when we're bouncing tracks down to import them into Ableton when we're sort of performing songs live. So yeah, let's crack on. So the first track, Comeback Complete, track 6 on part 1. The very first thing is these two tracks here, Nice Git and Nice Git Dry. Git obviously stands for guitar. So it's a sort of lovely it's a lovely chord, actually. If you are a guitarist out there, I'm not strong enough with music theory to sort of say exactly what chord I'm playing. It's F major, essentially, apart from on a guitar, the third string, so the D string, when you're playing F major as a bar, that D string is the third fret, which is just F natural, but here I'm dropping that down a semitone. So it's an E natural on the third string rather than F. And I'm not actually playing it bar, I'm playing it open. So occasionally I'm hitting like an open G below that D string. And it's actually a chord that I play all the time if I'm tuning a guitar or getting ready to sort of jam or play or do anything. It's often like the first chord I play. I just really like it. I think it sounds so warm and really nice. And that's why the session is called Nice Chord. Version 3, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, as with all of these track walkthroughs, the session title is very rarely what the song ends up being called. But yeah, so we started there with a nice chord. Occasionally I'm kind of like doing minor variations, like adding a note, adding like I guess it would be like a 7th or a 9th, although maybe not as jazzy. But you can see these Nice Git and Nice Git Dry. Interesting that I've called that Nice Git and that Nice Git Dry, and that's got some EQ on it. They're not being routed anywhere. I know in these previous videos we've talked about routing to auxiliary channels. You can see a good example of that here. So the output on these channels is set to bus 15 and 16, and then the input on this channel is set to bus 15 and 16, so any audio coming through these channels will route to this auxiliary, and both of these tracks will have this compression and this tape echo on. I thought it would be the same with our guitar tracks here, but not. Just some EQ there on that second guitar. I wonder if one of these is pitched down. Okay, I can see what we've done here. So, I can remember now. This first channel here, the reason it doesn't have any EQ on it is because there's like an amp hiss on the recording, and I really liked it. I really wanted to keep it in the song, because I think it gave the guitar a really gorgeous quality. So what we've done is we've EQ'd the amp hiss out on this track, but we've left it in on this, and then kind of automated the volume so it sort of like comes in and out. You can see here that hiss is getting more and more intense, which we'll hear when we go through that bit of the track. Kind of like climaxes here and then drops away. So let's solo this, and you'll be able to hear it coming in and hear that sort of increased hiss. So it sounds a lot more raw and a lot more dirty. And then this is just the sort of cleaned up, much more upfront version. Much more muted as well. Let's look at that EQ again. So we've taken out loads of the kind of sobby low end here. And then we've ducked it at around 350. That's just to take some of the muddy bass out. And then we've given it a little boost just after sort of 2k-ish here. Just to give it a little bit more clarity. So that's what's going on there. That's why there are two tracks, because that hiss on that first track is really nice and we wanted to keep it. Real Spirit of Glitch. The other thing that you hear first is this Audio 5 here, which is a very, very subtle kind of organ. Really quiet at the moment. That may even be fading in. No, we just mixed it that quietly. And that's kind of like moving up the octave with the root note probably being an F staying in place. And that would have been played on the Korg Mini-Log. I really like that sound. It's sort of like, it sounds quite organic to me, but it also reminds me of, I don't know, someone like Boards of Canada, something like that. And that's got EFX Fragments on it. For those of you that have been keeping up with these videos, EFX Fragments is our friend. With Shadows is a lovely, lovely little preset. It's really subtle, but in the low end, you just get these like kind of quite ghostly sort of creaking noises. And it almost sounds like a mistake. It almost sounds like, you know, like I'm talking into a mic now, and if I like knock the table with my like leg, you get that kind of rumbly sort of distortion. It kind of gives the organ that. It's so subtle, it won't come in now. But you will hear it if you go listen to this song on headphones. You'll hear it all the time, kind of throughout the song, throughout the track. Oh, there it kicked in. And then we just got these synth swells here. This will be the Korg Mini-Log as well. I wish I could remember the settings that we were using, but this was recorded a long time ago, and obviously we just don't write it down because we're very lazy. If you are a producer or an aspiring producer, or you're watching these videos to sort of learn in any kind of way, don't do this. Don't not name things properly or make notes, because you end up not really remembering what anything is. So yeah, really nice kind of swells there. And then yeah, I'll just go through a little bit of this percussion here. Really, again, quite simple. So that's our kick drum. I think I spoke about this last time. That is the 808 kick drum. Let's create a new track. So this is an instrument track in Pro Tools, slightly different to an audio track, but it allows you to load up an instrument. You can actually put an instrument plugin on an audio track, confusingly. And we would have been using Boom. And yeah, as I said in the last video, Boom has a really, really lovely kind of 808 sound. Let's load that up. So last time I tried to sort of demonstrate this, the track that I'd loaded it onto was had effects. It was routed through effects, so it sounded a bit crazy. But this is it naked, And it's just, I think it sounds quite true to an 808. But also it's just got this beautiful kind of analog warmth to it, even though it's like a soft synth digital kind of kick. I always trim the tone there a little bit, sometimes the decay as well. So you can hear that's just pulling the tail off the end of the kick a little bit. And actually, if you pull that right back, you get quite a nice click, like a clicks and cuts sort of click. We've done this before. Like, that's lush. I always think it sounds like static sort of dripping. So yeah, that would be the kick. And you can hear we've got some reverb on that. A bit of EQ, almost exactly on 100 there, just to bring out some of the thump. Big low pass filter just to wipe out the high ends. We've also got this plugin that Neil told me about. It's free, so if you want to grab this, you can. SK10 Sub Kick Simulator. It's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory, but it just gives everything a bit of thump. Let's bypass that. I don't know if you can hear, but it's a lot thinner sounding. So yeah, it just gives that a nice little bit of power, and then quite a big reverb on it. Not a lot wet dry, like it's quite subtle, but the decay is quite big. Arena. So yeah, just lots of this kind of scratchy, insecty kind of percussion. Lots of EFX fragments. I'm not going to go into sort of every single one. Vintage filter, which we've talked about before. It's really, really nice. That's just giving it that kind of slightly MIDI, almost boxy kind of like sound, but I really like that. And then just a bit of EQ on that. So the other major component that you'll be able to hear is this kind of electric piano sound. That's actually the harp on the Korg Minilog. But I think it sounds really kind of nice in a sort of IDM way. Sounds a bit like an Aphex sort of synth to me. And this was actually improvised. This was like an improvised take. Sort of played it in one go. And then, like, obviously you can see we've made some edits and repeated sections, but yeah, I remember this is pretty much take one, unedited. Just see what these Audio 9s are doing. Okay, so we isolated that 2-note motif from this improvised jam because we wanted it to repeat. And then that's pretty much it. Audio 2 here you can see gets a bit more interesting. That's going to be an EFX Fragments kind of jam thing. We've spoken about that in a couple of the other track walkthroughs where you have a normal drum loop and you run through the presets in EFX Fragments while recording to another track, and you get these kind of wonderful kind of like jams. And I think that's what's definitely happening here. It's so quiet and subtle. Don't worry, the track does get a lot louder. Yeah, that's it really. You can see that this hiss here is starting to get more intense, but that's all the elements. It's really quite minimal and simple. That organ comes back in. You can hear that hiss. then, yeah, it comes back in. So the new kind of elements that we're hearing are these pianos. So this was a recording that was sent to me by Kags. I realised that the track was all sort of quite low and mid-rangey, and it needed something bright to really punctuate the kind of melodic moments. And so I just sent her a message on WhatsApp saying, can you just send me, I think the notes are FEC maybe, descending, or FEC descending on a piano. And within a minute, she'd sent me a recording back. She was on it that day. I think if you go through our Instagram, you can see that I photo grabbed the WhatsApp message with the time codes on. So yeah, you can hear that's an organic piano. Very lovely. I think it's double tracked because... Oh, just for some stereo imaging. So you can see here that we've panned that. This one slightly further left. I wonder if one is pitched down. Oh, hello. Yeah, so that's why. It's double tracked, so one is pitched down as well, and they're both running through this auxiliary channel here, which we spoke about earlier. That's got some compression on it, quite aggressive compression. You can see how flat that line is. The ratio is 100 to 1. Really aggressively compressed. Threshold is kind of high considering the gain going in. So it is only just meeting the threshold, but when it does, it's really squashed. Which is quite funny. And then, yeah, just some tape echo. Quite a long echo. You can see there the milliseconds. So that's nearly 1.5 seconds on the kind of repeating. And then I think this track 19, is a synth piano that I layered underneath. Yeah. So that is, you can hear it's got a horrific amount of reverb on it. Load it into our instrument thing here. This is called Mini Grand. It's like fine. It's I wouldn't ever use it seriously in place of an actual piano. But there are moments where it will kind of do, especially in this situation where we're just like adding it as a augmentation to a real piano. And some of these, you know, kind of parameters that you can change are quite nice. Ambient and soft. You can change the dynamic response. And then, yeah, the mix there is a reverb. So that's quite dry. I think I probably did that just exactly because of what I just said, just to augment the actual organic real-life pianos. And you can hear that we obviously kept the reverb on within the plugin, because there's no reverb on the channel, just some... Oh, wait, maybe EFX Fragments is providing the reverb. Lush Planet, yes it is. So actually we probably recorded it dry, and then added the Lush Planet reverb, which is really long and very sci-fi. You can hear the tail on that goes on for ages. So if we bypass that, it's much shorter. Sounds like it's altering the pitch of the note as well slightly, which is very nice. Maybe just on an octave. So then the other major element we can see here is these 3 tracks are all going into this auxiliary input here called Git Screw. For fans of Godspeed You Black Emperor, that is what you think it is. It's a guitar being played with a screwdriver, and it kind of gives you that like slightly discordant, sorrowful kind of wailing sound. And then you can see the effects chain here is pretty dramatic. What is almost definitely the case is that you don't need all of these, but we would have been kind of messing with it a lot and playing and experimenting a lot to get a certain kind of sound. What we really should have done is then go back and see what we can remove. But we didn't. See, the volume here is quite low, it's very subtly mixed. So white boost is a distortion pedal. That's a second distortion pedal, which is insane because I can see black box here at the end, which is also sort of saturation and distortion. So there are 3 different types of distortion going on. EQ is also pretty insane. You might be able to get a sense from this sort of particular processing that sometimes we're just like throwing paint at a wall and kind of seeing what sticks. Massively wiped out loads of the mid and low frequencies, and then just boosted big notch here in the kind of high end sparkly frequencies. And then we've got a reverb on there as well, which is Canyon, which is a massive reverb. I wonder if we sort of slowly take these away. You can hear the noise, you can see why that EQ is so dramatic. I mean, it's nearly gone there without the kind of distortion boost. That's so subtle, isn't it? I wonder if that's... Oh, it's just giving it a little bit of high-end boost. I don't know how well you can hear that. You can hear how much work is being done by the EQ here. And actually that reverb is doing a lot of the legwork as well. So yeah, I mean, maybe all of these were justified. I think you could probably get rid of that saturation and, wouldn't sound too much different. But I guess it's these sort of kind of quite nuanced, subtle sort of additions that sometimes can really make a sound. I love how these guitars sound. I think they sound great. And I think I probably did this because maybe Cags wasn't available to record strings on that day or something, and I maybe even put it down as a placeholder and then never took them out. So that's all the elements together. It's really minimal. It's really quite minimal. So yeah, on the album, that's where we would have bounced the track from there. Oh, that was the FX Fragments, just doing a little jam. That's just a sine tone, high sine tone. I really like the spiritualized song that it's all the kind of a cappella rounds all layered over each other, and it's Paco Bale's canon essentially. But in it, there's a sine tone. It almost sounds like a walkie-talkie or something that occasionally just goes beep. And actually, that appears in loads of Jilk tracks. We did an EP. One of our first EPs was called Carry On, and it's on that. And I think I've put it on tracks ever since. So that's this idea here. I wanted I love that like sudden stop, and something to kind of signify that as we move into part 2. So what we've got going on here is essentially elements from part one, but kind of remixed. So this is the harp, the kind of Aphex synth. And we've cut that. It's quite a crude loop, but we've cut it into a that kind of like 3-chord pattern. Well, 6 chords. And then underneath that, is the same thing, but it's that technique of that kind of EFX fragments jam. Which is really great, just giving it loads of movement. And that's probably why we weren't too upset about the crudeness of this loop, because the whole thing is kind of stuttering all over the place. And it's adding to sort of some of the percussion elements and whatnot. In terms of effects chains, I don't think we've got anything too insane going on. No, just a compressor on the EFX, on the affected, the wet sort of channel, just to keep it in check. I think I spoke last time about how EFX fragments can really sit on top of your mix sometimes. And then we have these drum channels. Again, you can see we've routed these into an auxiliary input, and we've put an Abbey Road reverb on there. I'm not going to open that because it crashes Pro Tools quite a lot. Again, Abbey Road's plate reverbs I think is free. So actually, let's just open it and see if it crashes it. No, it doesn't crash it, but it appears very small. I upgraded my OS and this happened for some reason. What's interesting is about trying to use it is the knobs are still mapped to the sort of whole black square. So if I drag and select here, you can see that I'm now selecting that knob, which is fun, trying to play with that. But these plate reverbs are really nice. They're really, really good. They're all over Syrup House, album Syrup House. It's pretty much like the reverb on Syrup House is Abbey Road plates. So yeah, that's just running into there. You can see we've got some compression and saturation from Black Box and an EFX Fragments plugin running on the drums. So this is actually the result of a kind of EFX Fragments jam. We would have had a normal drum loop. And then we've doubled that channel and added another EFX Fragments to it. It's giving that kind of like cool, slightly more high-end kind of percussive tone. It's called Extra Minimal Percussion. Hey, pretty well named. And then the piano notes are just repeating up here over the top. And that's all it is. Again, really simple. I think what I love about this is that it sounds really complex and like we spent a long time editing it. And we kind of did. You can see there are loads of chops here. But also a lot of that complexity is coming from the initial kind of recording of the FX jams. I think I touched on this before. I think it's just a really good way to work, a really kind of important way to work, where you're sort of kind of leaving things to serendipity and chance a little bit by kind of jamming these effects, and then organising the jams rather than kind of, I don't know, pre-planning it too much or spending ages like placing everything by hand. I think this way of working gives you an element of serendipity that keeps it interesting for you, all for one. You can see we've edited in some sort of gaps and drops there. And our guitar has come back in. But pretty much just 2 chords repeated for now. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's just more of the Aphex synth kind of repeated. You can hear here we've got that kind of vibraphone synth, that kind of lead melody. Again, would have been played on an improv basis and then chopped into kind of moments. I'm a big fan of working like that. Oh, there's some nice stuff going on there, isn't there? Oh, there's a massive effects chain going on here. So we've got some compression and some EQ. EQ's pretty just like boosting the higher end, obviously. We've got some lo-fi on there. That bit depth has been reduced. I think we're automating it as well. We'll see when that comes in. And the sample rate's been reduced. And that gives it a kind of dirty sound if we bypass that. And it stops. You can hear it sounds a lot cleaner. And I imagine at some point that will automate to become a bit more extreme. No, maybe not. Maybe it's just a sort of quality sound thing. So this is cool. These hats would have been boom as well. But you can hear that they change tempo. Well, not tempo, but like they're playing, the note length changes. So sometimes it's 16ths, sometimes it's 8ths, and sometimes it's 4ths. So it's like half time, quarter time. It's cool. I like it. It sounds a bit like trap. We take it from trap. And the way that you achieve that is actually in boom. So if we clear our pan, we'll load in the 808 because that's what we would have been using. Maybe not. Anyway. Just going to turn this up so you can hear it. So if we put like just a 4 pattern in. And then you can see the speed knob down here and you can half time it. Or you can double time it. So we would have just recorded this in, playing it like this. It's going to take some of that swing out. And then I think it does quantize to a certain degree. So, you know, even if you're kind of missing the beat a little bit like I was there, it doesn't sound too bad. So that's how we achieved that. And yeah, just some saturation on it. that's pretty much it. Just those elements repeat. That organ comes back in. The guitar chords stop repeating so much and they go back to how they're being played near the beginning in part 1. And then the major kind of difference is Cags was obviously available because we repeat that kind of screwdriver guitar motif from the end of part 1, but we add in strings this time. And it's violin and it's viola as well, which is lush. I love the viola. Oh, maybe it's actually entirely viola, because that's just called viola. Oh, okay, yeah, no, actually no violin. Scratch that, it's just viola. Played slightly higher up octave on that second track there. And then we've got this other guitar coming in, which we added last. It's the very last thing to be added to the song. So let's have a look at the effects chains. Nothing too crazy going on. All of the viola we are sending to this auxiliary input here at EQ. Pretty subtle, looks like that. We've just wiped out a lot of the low end, dipped the mid. I remember we did a gig years and years and years ago, and the sound engineer was talking about Cags' violin, and he sort of turned to us at one point and he just said, oh, you know, whenever you're mixing a violin live or in studio, just get rid of all the mid-range. Which always stuck with me. I don't agree with that. Use your ears. Obviously it's going to change depending on the player, the string instrument, the mic, all of that sort of stuff. But I think I probably put that little notch in there for him. Just so I was knocking out a bit of the mid-range. And then obviously we're boosting it there as well for clarity. And then it's just got reverb and tape echo, so you know, nothing too crazy. Sounds very organic, sounds quite distant to me, but I like that. And this guitar sounds quite naked as well, and a bit closer, which I quite like. That's an amp modeler that we've got on there. Some compression and those Abbey Road plates as well. What's nice about the Abbey Road plates is that they do sound really close and really in the room. It isn't this like cloudy kind of long reverb. It's sort of, they're really good for giving something like a quality rather than just sort of drowning it in kind of, you know, post-rock reverb. And that's it. That's sort of the end of part 1 of the album, and yeah, sort of end of a kind of narrative cycle. And so we wanted it to feel quite poignant. There you can hear, do you remember we talked about EFX fragments on the organ near the beginning and giving it that kind of like, oh, I've knocked the desk sort of kind of quality? You can hear it here. It's really subtle. Put headphones on and listen. It sounds like a kind of scraping chair, like kind of sound. Very nice. And that's it. That's those 2 songs. Yeah, nothing else really to say. Again, they're very simple. I realise that I keep picking quite simple sessions to go through. That's partly because when we're recording with OBS, it tends to crash my laptop a little bit. But yeah, I thought that one would be good because it's a good demonstration of that kind of technique of the part 1, part 2 thing, and each track being a reaction, and you can see how it's just like elements from part 1 remixed and kind of glitched up, and it sounds quite different, but you can see that there's not really too much different going on in terms of the session. So yeah, thank you for watching and for listening. I hope it's sort of been useful. Please comment and below, and if there's anything else you'd want me to go through or touch on, I can do. I don't know how many more of these we will do. I think I'd like to try and do another one, but also maybe go through some of the kind of processing techniques that we have. So we use a couple of things away from Pro Tools, Max MSP patches, and some kind of different sampling techniques. So I think I'll do a video on that next time, which will be a little bit different. But for now, thank you very much, and we will see you soon.